And all right. Okay, so there's been a lot of stuff, and we keep seeing patients who are coming in with all sorts of weird issues that blood work isn't necessarily showing. So, for instance, we're seeing lots of hair loss, specifically in women, men too, but mostly in women. We're seeing fatigue. We're seeing all sorts of things. What the research is showing is that COVID is blocking or damaging the receptor sites for a lot of this stuff. So, for instance, like when we look at thyroid levels, the amount of iodine we're having to give people is higher than normal because we're trying to literally bring up thyroid function. So like T3 is made of 3 iodines, T4 is made of 4 iodines. Iodine's hypercritical to thyroid function. So what happens is that on the thyroid, the receptors, they go in the receptors and they make everything work and they can absorb it through. Those receptors being blocked. And so you're going to need more iodine to get the same reaction than you did beforehand. So that's one of the things we're seeing. We're also seeing a significant reduction in estrogen function. That reduction in estrogen function is going to lead to hair loss for a lot of women. It's going to lead to hot flashes, night sweats, vaginal dryness, all those sort of things as well. It's also going to lead to UTI issues in women. And so we're going to have lots of little issues like that. And the problem is that when you do hormone therapy, a lot of people are shooting for, like I tell people, don't treat the patient, not the paper. So a lot of people, what they do is they look at, how much hormone is in the blood and they go, well, you're good because you have enough in the blood. What the blood shows what the hormone receptor functionality is not the same thing. And so what a lot of people need to start doing, as I would recommend, is that they start treating the patient via symptomatology. So what ends up happening is, you give them some hormone and you say, how do you feel? And they're like, oh, things are a little bit better, and you can give them a little bit more. And so you can kind of balance it off on that. Now, the way that I would recommend doing it specifically with women is I would fix their testosterone levels first. And the reason I would do that is because the testosterone converts to estrogen, and a lot of times at the site of function. So for instance, you give a woman testosterone and it converts to estrogen at the uterus or at the ovaries or at the vaginal function. And so the hot flashes, night sweats, vaginal dryness go away, but the amount of estrogen in the blood doesn't go up that much at all. And so the reason you want to do that one first is because you want to say, okay, we're going to here are the things that testosterone does for us, and here's the transitional or the conversion function. So, where's our energy? Where's our sex drive? Where's our soreness after we work out, do things like that? Like those are big ones. Libido's going to be in this a little bit. And then once you kind of get that level up where it's supposed to be, then you can go, okay, how are your hot flashes, night sweats, vaginal dryness? How are your UTIs? How's your hair loss stuff? And if they're like, oh, it's all completely better, great. You don't necessarily need more estrogen. However, if they come in and they're like, it's better, but it's not great. Perfect. Now we can start adding it in. Progesterone, by the way, is the job of progesterone is to increase blood flow to the uterus, to increase healthy function, oxygen, nutrient delivery to the uterus to help feed the baby. You don't need a ton of it. However, progesterone does convert to estrogen as well. And it also helps keep the uterus healthy and functional as well. So a little bit of progesterone, this is in women who are, outside of childbearing function. So they're, 35 to 40, and that range up. If they've already had their kids, like I'm not having any more kids, like those are things you kind of have to kind of keep in mind. It's a completely different functionality for trying to have people with fertility and make babies. So different conversation. This is for like the other 90% of the people. So that's the way that I think it's the best functional way to do it, to make sure that people are getting where they're supposed to go. The other thing is that the reason why it's harder to use the paper, the lab results, to specifically dictate to every patient is if you're like, everyone should be at 52. Well, not everybody's receptor function is there as well. And so some people might need to be at 35. Some people might need to be at 100. And so, those are some of the things you have to factor in. The problem we get into is that there's a lot of people who aren't factoring in physiological function as well. So they're like, well, man, you're really tired. We gave you all these hormones and your fatigue didn't go away. Well, all right, cool. What's their systemic inflammation? Where's their fasting insulin? How much methylated B vitamins are they getting? These are all super important things. Where's their D3? Again, these are really important things. How's their mitochondrial health? These are all really, really important things that factor into some of these issues as well. So when you're working with hormones, you want to make sure that you're getting people functional, but you need to, like, the reason that we look at the papers is you're like, okay, you're at 60. You should have had this resolution at 30. So we need to kind of figure out what else is going on. And this is why it's really important that you have to look at the body holistically if you're going to work with peptides or hormones, because if you just like, well, I'm just going to keep giving you testosterone or estrogen or whatever until the problem goes away. That's not how the body works. So doing hormone therapy like that is like trying to get you lift the pool table up to get the pool balls to go somewhere. They're all going to move if you lift the table up. So for instance, if you give a woman estrogen, it's going to convert in other things. If you give them testosterone, it's going to convert into other things. If they're low in B vitamins, sometimes these things won't convert very well. If they're low in fatty acids, like there's a whole bunch of different things that play into this that are usually not taken into account. So we see this with peptide work all the time. This is a great example of how everything works together. When you give somebody a GLP-1 peptide, if you don't recognize that you're now radically increasing fat utilization for someone who hasn't been doing fat utilization function, and you don't increase their methylated B6, you don't increase their bile flow function, you're going to have liver cholestasis, gallbladder, you're going to have those issues. So you're going to have energy issues and things like that. So it's when we start using things, what we have to start looking at is, what is the physiological path? Where's all this go? And how's it all function out? So for instance, same exact idea. If you're using testosterone in men, you've got to be like, all right, look, we can hold you at high levels. You're going to feel amazing. You're going to grow the muscle tissue. You're going to lose the fat, all these things. But at some point, it does affect hair function. So if that's a problem for you, it's not a problem for me. If it's a problem for some of you, you got to kind of dial some of that back and kind of understand where things are going to be. But at the same time, it is always going to reduce fertility and testicular function. So if you are working with somebody who fertility is a problem, or you worry about fertility, you need to work up at the top of the chain to the bottom of the chain. That's where HCG comes in. And so there's a lot of these different things that we have to factor in when we're using hormones, and how does it affect the body, and what other things are affected by making this change. So those are some of the things that we've got to start factoring in. But COVID has done a giant amount of damage to a lot of people by damaging their cells. So, if you've got extra fatigue, if you've got hair loss, if you've got, emotional issues, depression, if you just don't feel like you want to go out and do the things, hormones are probably what you're looking at. However, you have to factor in, what is the COVID doing to the body that is now restricting or altering the function of what's going on. And this is why a lot of people who are on hormone therapy or getting on hormone therapy aren't getting 100% of the results they need, because COVID has wrecked everybody's body. Remember, and I get a lot of grief for saying this, but COVID is a biological weapon that was designed to do exactly what it's doing, to reduce the population of the planet. And so these are some of the things that we've got to kind of factor in. You have to understand that you have been attacked on a multi-spectrum functionality, regardless if it's just like, well, I just don't have this hormone, or I don't have this thing, or there's extra blood clotting, so I have to take kinase. It's going to affect a lot of other systems. And if you don't look at it holistically, we're going to have a problem. So if you guys have any other questions, hit us up, questions@chalmerswellness.com, drop in the comments, or I'll talk to you guys on the phone. All right, you guys have a fantastic day. Thanks for your time.